Good. So this is Dejustifying Scientific Progress by Finnur, Dellsen, and James Norton. And this is, I believe, forthcoming in Philosophy of Science. Maybe it's out already. I don't know. Let's see what's to say. It says it's in Philosophy of Science. So yeah, as always, as my first time reading it, I'm not endorsing it. And please ask questions along the way. I will attempt to explain what I think is going on, why they put all this time and effort into writing a paper and getting it published. And at the end, if you stick around, you get to rate the paper. We have a whole rating system where you get to spam some emotes in chat. Okie dokie. So here we go. Let me know. In a recent paper in this journal, Stegenga, sorry how I pronounce all of your names, formulates and defends a justification-based account of scientific progress. Doger says, I'm on antidepressants, and it's improved my gas mileage. Our subconscious self is very interesting. Interesting, yeah. Yeah. That's good to know that, like, maybe antidepressants make you a better driver or something like that. But, like, this is the thing. Feedback's a weird thing both in philosophy and other places. So, yeah. Okay, so on this account, science makes progress just in case there is a change in scientific justification. Stegenga notes that he was, quote, surprised to learn, end quote, that the literature has neglected this compelling contender. Here we present several problems for Stegenga's account, which may go some way towards explaining this neglect. We conclude by offering up a substantially different justification-based account of scientific progress that avoids these problems. There was a Mythbusters episode on that. Interesting. Huh. Like what? Like that your driving affects your gas mileage? Or that antidepressants affect your driving? Or both? Okay, so Genga's account. There are many ways to build justification into account of scientific progress. In Bird's epistemic account, for instance, justification is front and center since science makes progress via the accumulation of knowledge, and knowledge requires justification. Indeed, even when justification is not front and center, it has certainly not been neglected in discussions of progress. Ni Niluoto, sorry, these names are not what I'm used to saying. For instance, when defending his truth-likeness account from Robotom's objections, claims that, quote, beliefs without any justification simply do not belong in the scope of scientific progress, end quote. Stegenga's account is unique, however, in that justification is its only component, thereby eschewing notions that have been central to the most prominent accounts proposed in the last 50 years, such as knowledge, truth-likeness, understanding, and problem-solving. According to Stegenga's statement of his account, quote, science makes progress if and only if there's a change in justification, end quote. Strikingly, Stegenga considers but immediately rejects a justification-based account according to which progress is made just in case there is an increase in the degree to which some hypothesis is justified. Road rage, smooth versus erratic acceleration or braking. Oh, interesting. Yeah, because I always try to, like, there's in the cars I've had or driven, there's usually a little there's a little indicator on how efficient you're driving. Like, you know, if you're going downhill, the efficiency goes up, and if you're going uphill, the efficiency goes down because you have to, like, accelerate. And so I wonder what it is. But, like, yeah, that's a kind of an interesting thing. Anyway, continuing the paper. What matters for progress, he insists, is not increase but change. This aspect of the account is motivated by the observation that evidence which bolsters our justification for some hypothesis H will correspondingly decrease our justification for its contrary, not H, and vice versa, so any new evidence will increase our justification for some hypothesis. Thus, argues Stegenga, increases and changes in justification are formally interchangeable as an account of scientific progress. Okay, so, alright, so every confirmation is really a deconfirmation of some counter theory, and that's what it is. It's not that there's an increase in along one dimension of, like, confirmation for a theory, but really a disconfirmation of some other theory, which is unique. And so it's not really the increase in confirmation, which goes to scientific progress, but the removal of counterexamples. I mean, that does make some sense. It's that you're taking away different ways that a theory could be wrong. And that you could say it has a cumulative effect, but that's secondary to the taking away of counterexamples. Okay. That's not a crazy thought. Stigenga considers various explications of changing justification, but doesn't commit to any particular one for the purposes of his account. Notably, however, Stigenga says of the notion of scientific justification that it is, quote, special, it is communal and intersubjective, end quote. It goes on to emphasize that scientific progress must have uptake in the broader community besides the scientists doing the research itself. The social function of science progress has been given insufficient attention in the literature, and thus this emphasis is in our view a laudable feature of Stigenga's account. Yeah, I mean, this goes back to the Kuhn that, there's a sociology to science, and, depending on how that's taken, they like what Stigenga said about that. Kind of Kuhnian. Yep, exactly, K-Parse. You got there before I did. Finally, Stigenga's paper does not explicitly propose a measure of the degree to which there is scientific progress in the given episodes, that is, the amount of progress. Doggio says, my dislike of statistics is due to emphasis on justification. Justification is the opposite of the full appreciation of complex interaction. That's why I'm excited about machine learning techniques that reduce but don't smooth out over the complexity. Yeah. So, I mean, there is always a problem with reductionism. Always. Like, is it actually capturing the phenomena in question, or is it breaking it into something else that it wasn't? And that's always a difficulty. So you want to be able to maintain the most interesting interactions. And if you reduce it to something else, have you really captured the phenomena that you were interested in, or have you taken away too much? Like maybe you missed something in your reduction, and that's always a trouble. So yeah, there's a hard balance really, because you do want to break things into like its components to understand what's going on, but you don't want to lose whatever was there. So yeah. A balance a lot of times. Okay. So, yeah. Continuing. This is a crucial issue, that is, the amount of progress is not defined here. For any account of progress to address, since an account that merely judges that there was some progress in certain episodes cannot account for the fact that there was more progress in theoretical physics in the first few decades of the 20th century than in the first few decades of the 14th century, assuming that there was some progress during both periods. In light of this, we shall interpret Stigenga as being committed to a natural extinction of his stated account, according to which the degree to which there was progress in a given episode is in some way proportional to the degree to which there was change in justification. Lies, damn lies, and even fooling yourself. Absolutely. I remember my dad used to, when I was a little kid, he mentioned this to me once, that people lie with statistics. I was like, what do you mean they lie with statistics? He said there was a famous, I think it was Ernie Anastas. For any of you old New Yorkers, if there's any of you actually out there, they said he kind of got famous by investigating all the gas stations in the area and was like, half of the gas stations are overcharging you. Well, by definition, half of the gas stations are going to be higher than average. And it made a little splash, but he was laughing about it because it was like, well, of course, half the gas, it's not overcharging. That's just how averages work. So it's like, yeah. But my dad, I remember I was a little kid. I was maybe 5 or 6. I remember him saying something like this. And Ernie Anastas. Yeah. Shit, that was a long time ago. Yeah, you know what? Give me a half a second aside. Not for the nostalgia sake of it, but just let me see if I'm right. Ernie Anastas. Or not Ernier. I think it was Ernie Anastas. Ernie Anastas, Wikipedia. This guy. See this? And he's New York Emmy-winning television news anchor and talk show host on ABC. Yep, this guy. I mean, they're not going to make fun of him for his, let's see, gas. See if it shows up. No gas. But this is the guy, Ernie Anastas. It's like he was a television news anchor, and he was making shit up, and he fooled everyone to thinking oh my god, half the gas stations are robbing us. Simpson's Paradox demonstrating statistics and probability theory. Yeah. Or when meteorologists say with confidence that there was a 50% chance of rain. Exactly. It's like, oh, you don't fucking say. I don't remember. Like, I'm trying to remember Simpsons Paradox off the top of my head. It's like I remember them talking about this though. Like, yeah, like I remember this was like part of the thing about Simpsons Paradox. But damn it, I cannot. Yeah, that's right. So yeah, you've got confounding variables here. Misuse of statistics. Yep, that's right. So I was like, yeah, this is also something people should probably check out one day. Click. Okay. Yep. Yeah. Oh, well. The Twitch chat killed that link. But anyway. Okay. So that was Stigenga's account where you're saying, look, it's not necessarily like you can't always judge how much progress is made, which kind of makes sense. Is that you're ruling out certain counter theories. Lumen says, do you agree with the paper that knowledge requires justification? As I have said in my published works, Luminance, I do not like the justified true belief theory. So the idea that you're relying on justification is in some sense a confused thought. I use a game theoretic or sort of like a decision theoretic matrix on knowledge, which severely restricts what I count as knowledge. But beyond that, to get what I would call scientific knowledge, not like hard and fast, like hard knowledge, then you can use what you would call justification. But like that relates back to, you know, how much of our society would collapse given if like, you know, what we take to be true not to hold up. I mean, my theory on this is that like you've got compounded everydayness. If something's been true every day of your entire life, and it's been true because it was true the last day. Like I have a hand here, and I've had a hand every other day, and every day I've like worked with my hands basically. If I was like I don't have hands now, and that would be false, well, it's not a justification in some sense that, oh yeah, it happened every day. It's that it wouldn't, like the entirety of my life would not make sense. So I dislike current theories of justification. If you want to call my decision theoretic, how things I could not even speak anymore if I gave up a justification, sure, but like I don't like it. It's not on the same sort of footing as the other justifications. It's not statistical. It's more of a personal history issue. And then if you want to expand from there, you can expand from there, like doing some like baby steps really. But then if you want to talk about like, say, okay, no one's ever been to Mars, like the old examples, no one's been to the moon from Wittgenstein. No one's ever yet been to Mars, but it's on the horizon. We might yet get to Mars in like our lifetimes. Some of us, maybe. And not by just, I mean us, but like, you know, one or two people might get to Mars. I mean, that's in the realm of plausibility. Now, can I say I know that? Well, the plausibility is like, yeah, but that's, you know, a statistical thing. And you could call that a justification if you want, but that's not like exactly the same. You have to show my flippers at least once on stream. Yes, I do. Lumen says, hi, that's why I was thinking you might have a problem with their claims here. So the issue, Lumen says, I don't have a problem with their claims here. Not at all, actually. Because it depends on what they're talking about. Now, if they're not doing straight epistemology here, so it's good for you to bring this up. This is not a paper in epistemology, it's a paper in science. How they understand justification in science is different than like what I consider just like straight knowledge. So if you're going to talk about scientific research and like the sociology stuff, yeah, that's more complicated, but that's okay. I allow the scientists to say, well, this is scientific knowledge, and they can like, you know, shorten that to like regular like knowledge on its own. But like I make a distinction between scientific knowledge and then like hard knowledge, like knowledge simplicator. So yeah. Stats versus personal history. Yeah. Okay. Something to know. Adam says, remark bias. Smiling. So I think you're working on the problem from the middle ground, the naturalist account, how intuitively we observe people act, say smiling at things they like. This model places undefined items having common actions as likely ones. That explanation and predictions, though, moves from the model to a projected one to the world or will be. This presupposes metaphysics that most ways things can or will be reduced from past examples. That's fair. So yes, the issue here is, Adam, is that I'm not working only from those examples. I'm working from a background, like I started off, I don't know if you were here early enough, I'm starting off from a general background attitude. It's a Wittgensteinian sort of background attitude about the regularity of how you understand the world to go. And there is no one or like two examples. The idea that we have, like you smile, you smile and stuff. The idea is, the only point that I'd like maybe dig my feet in on is that there's feedback going on in our lives. These are just particular examples. I'm not wedded to them. There is this background sort of sense of the world. That's the background metaphysics here, though. And so that's a good point. Marshall's nice. That's actually cool to distinguish between science and epistemology. But the other day we read a paper about meta-science. Yeah. Well, people disagree about this stuff. Absolutely, DeMarshall. Yeah. We're going to be communists? Hopefully. Yeah. One can hope. So, yeah. But, like, that's a good point, Adam. But, like, I'm not starting from those examples. I'm starting from a Wittgensteinian background attitude that there is a, for better or worse, like, this is my take on form of life. So that's what I'm doing. Okay. So back to the paper, though. With Stegenga's account thus outlined, we will now show that it faces 4 substantial problems. Okay, so progress through misleading evidence. The first problem stems from the commonsensical observation that evidence can be misleading. That is, part or all of someone's evidence E may support some particular hypothesis H, despite H being false, even radically so. There seem to be 2 broad ways in which this could occur. Yeah, I mean, if you're an epistemologist, you could just Gettier this. You have evidence of something, except that you are fooled. You are right, you're wrong, but for the right reasons. You had good evidence, but like you're still wrong. First, E might itself be flawed in some way, such as in a failed experiment or botched observation. Yeah, so if you guys know the barn example, botched observation, you see what looks like a barn, but it's just a barn facade. Second, if E is itself in good standing, the evidence might nevertheless be in some way unrepresentative of the truth. As an example of the latter, consider all the evidence available to the European naturalists in the 16th and 17th centuries, which lent justification to the hypothesis that there are no egg-laying mammals. This hypothesis is false, as demonstrated by the existence of the platypus and other monotremes. But there was no way for Europeans to know this, since all specimens of monotremes were located on the other side of the globe. Yeah, so I mean, this is the problem of induction. They said no mammals lay eggs, but that's just because they had never run into one on the other side of the world. It happens. Misleading evidence is a problem for Stegenga's account because obtaining misleading evidence would imply a change in justification. After all, although misleading evidence is misleading, it is still evidence. And evidence is, paradigmatically, the sort of thing that changes whether or to the extent to which a hypothesis is justified. So no matter how misleading a given piece of evidence is, that is, for example, that it supports a radically false hypothesis, obtaining it would still be progressive on Stegenga's view. Indeed, a consequence of Stegenga's view is that obtaining misleading evidence of this kind would be just as progressive as obtaining ordinary, non-misleading evidence which changes our justification of some hypothesis to the same degree. As a corollary, wow, I can't talk anymore, obtaining a substantial amount of misleading evidence and no ordinary non-misleading evidence would be highly progressive, more progressive than obtaining a slightly smaller amount of ordinary non-misleading evidence. Okay. This is all very hard to swallow. Surely, evidence that misleads the scientific community into accepting false or decreasingly truth-like theories should not count as equally progressive as ordinary non-misleading evidence. Indeed, the problem is not just that these consequences of Stegenga's view are highly counterintuitive. More importantly, they show that Stegenga's account does not have the resources to explain the basic fact that we should prefer to have made more progress rather than less, all other things being equal. First, if Stegenga's account is correct, then scientific progress might put us in a position in which we have lots of misleading evidence and no ordinary non-misleading evidence at all regarding various scientific claims. In such a scenario, those of us who put our trust in the scientific evidence with confidence buoyed by the apparent prevalence of progress in science would be led astray, and that we would have believed and acted on false claims. This would be a type of scientific progress that we would arguably be better without. We should split the drink redeem into two, water and whiskey. Yeah, I used to get drunk during streams back during the pandemic days. It was a little bit messy. Also, streamer brain gets, like, I already get streamer brain, and then, like, alcohol makes it even worse. Like, my recall gets worse, and, you know, I just get stupid. But, like, yeah. I mean, Vipers, if I had more money and time, I'd love to just be, like, stupid on stream, play games, and, like, get drunk sometimes. But, you know, I have to go to work in the morning. Why? Why can't I just be rich? I've still not figured, like, I feel like I should figure this out one day, but I just haven't. Alright. Like, start praising Trump and, like, go conservative and throw up a GoFundMe and be like, I'll be the conservative philosopher that everyone wants. Give me millions of dollars. Maybe they would. Okay. Progress through lost, destroyed evidence. A related problem stems from the fact that a change in justification may come about because evidence is lost or even destroyed. In everyday life, this is commonplace, and it may simply consist in forgetting something. In science, by contrast, there are various mechanisms in place that are designed to prevent evidence from being lost or destroyed. For example, academic libraries, data servers, and online repositories are all designed to preserve data and other forms of evidence, as well as other information that may contribute to justification, for example, arguments, proofs, computer code, and so on. Even so, scientific evidence can be lost or destroyed. After all, libraries have burned down, or had their books stolen, servers have been destroyed, or had their files deleted, repositories have been hacked or decommissioned, and so on. And, you know, Anna's archive has been, people are trying to take it down at the moment, which is one of these big repositories of PDFs and papers, academic papers without a paywall. And it also looks like NVIDIA had contacted Anna's archive to get their archive for training data for probably some AI stuff. So it's kind of interesting. Like, you know, on one hand, people are trying to take it down because they don't like the idea that knowledge is available to everybody without a paywall. And on the other, it's like, well, we need that nowadays because that's what makes the new tech. Dogo says, confounding factor is the common reason that correlation isn't causation. Every video on confounding factor has a sad face. Oh, sad face. Art with zero, what's up? At 1 with 0, sorry. A big part of my last job was DMCAing Anna's archive on behalf of Springer Nature. Yeah, exactly. I mean, they are not registered in the U.S., so you can DMCA them all you want, but they're not subject to the U.S. Laws. So it's like, there's that classic letter from the Pirate Bay to lawyers here in the United States, where the Pirate Bay just says, like, and it's like, this is such an old letter that it's like JPEG to, like, holy hell, can you get some more pixels, please? But, like, it's like, they were just like, go fuck yourselves. We are in Sweden. We are not subject to the laws of the United States. So, but, like, you know, people like Springer Nature, they make their money off, you know, yes, there are publishers and they're supporting the publishing of academic work, but they want to get paid for it, and then they don't want the academic work to be released without them getting paid. Now, we're hopefully moving away from this model, but it's going to take a while. And what's it called? The academic publishers make insane margins on all the money because mostly academics do all the work and don't get paid for it. Yeah, thank you, Vipers. I mean, let's find out how JPEG this one is. It's like, this is early internet. Yes, this is 2004. Like, this is 2004, and you can, like, see, like, it's copied and then copied. Oh, wow. You can see the fucking pixels here. You can fucking see the pixels. Famous letter. Oh, did I show it or not? Yeah, I don't even know. Doesn't matter. Oopsie, whatever. Okay, yeah, so it's interesting. Like, these are just battles going on nowadays between the people who want to make the research available and have backups of everything versus the people who are like, no, you pay us and we keep it safe, but you have to pay us for everything. Yeah. But I mean, keep in mind, the philosophers, like this whole thing with like Phil Papers and Phil Archive is an attempt by the philosophers to, do it in a an open way so that there's a philosophy archive that we maintain. So yeah. Douglas says Cory Doctorow just had an enshittification talk and right to repair that had a lot to say about the trade agreement between trade agreements and U.S. laws. Yeah, I mean, the people who make a lot of money off of intellectual property do not like letting, the free flow of knowledge. They make money off paywalling everything. So they don't like it, and so they buy politicians here in the U.S. because that's how you get stuff done, apparently. And you, and that's how trade deals get done, by controlling politicians. Apple right to repair guy, yeah. So this is the whole thing. And what was that guy's name? He was here in New York. I walked by his place one time when he was here in New York. I think he moved to Texas. The guy who would repair Apple products years ago. He seemed like he was a solid dude. Okay, so we're talking about losing data, which then, how does that affect progress in science? This is a problem for Stigenga's account because losing scientific evidence is one way in which scientific justification may change. In particular, in losing evidence for some proposition P, our justification for P often decreases. For specifically, suppose that some data is lost and unrecoverable and the researchers cannot recall whether and the extent to which the data supported rejecting their null hypothesis. We take it that in such a case, the scientific community might have less justification for the negation of their null hypothesis than they had before the data server crashed. By Stigenga's lights, such a decreasing justification counts as progress. Yeah, Rossman, exactly. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, that guy, he's been fighting the good fight on the right to repair for years, and I don't know what he's up to nowadays, but we should be able to repair our own stuff. And we were talking about this earlier with John Deere tractors, that people are prizing the old John Deere tractors, which were repairable, over the new ones that you're locked into a service contract, and they'll lock it down if you don't pay your contract. So yeah. So this is one of these problems here in the U.S. is that we need to, the idea that people can't repair their own shit, it's insane. Because there's so many people with skill and knowledge out there, and then you have to go pay someone money to do this. It's like, no. Anyway. As before, the problem here is not just that these consequences of Stigenga's views are bizarre. The concern is that a concept of scientific progress on which it may consist in losing evidence does not seem to be well suited to explain why scientific progress is worth making. Relatedly, Stigenga's account seems to imply that scientists who are seeking to maximize scientific progress on a given issue should behave in ways that seem antithetical to the ethos of science. For example, scientific progress would be achieved by deliberately destroying extant pieces of evidence. Indeed, since activities such as hacking research repositories would presumably destroy a great deal of evidence, which in turn would cause large-scale changes in justification, and thus a great deal of scientific progress would be highly incentivized. Yeah, so it looks like the real problem here is that the changing justification has to come with a valence. It has to be a good change in justification, not just any change in justification to make scientific progress. So we'll see where this paper goes, but that looks like what's going on here is there's way too many ways to make changes in justification that are not what we call progress in science. Stretch. Yeah. One arm up, one arm down. Yeah. Okay. A third problem concerns the way in which the amount of progress that occurred during a given episode is measured. Suppose that the scientific research into some phenomenon from an initial time t0 to the current time tn has substantially increased our degree of justification for some hypothesis h. On Stegenga's view, one would have thought that this change in justification should straightforwardly translate to a corresponding degree of progress. But note that this substantial increase in justification could either have been the result of a series of incremental increases in the justification for H, or b, a series of incremental increases interspersed with even smaller decreases in the justification for H, such that the substantial increase in justification is reached via a repeated process of 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Since there would be more change in justification between T0 and Tn in the second scenario on Stegenga's account, there would be more progress in that scenario despite the 2 snares having the very same starting and end results. This situation creates 2 related problems for Stegenga's account. Energy says, the thing I don't love about this paper is that I believe scientific progress can be interpreted as a vague concept. That's fair, but they are responding to someone else at the moment, which is cool. But it's like not very exciting, and I can see why you might have a problem with it. They said they're going to get somewhere, though, at the end. So they're going to outline the problems with this Stegenga's account, then they're going to get somewhere. So it's like you kind of have to hold your breath to see where they're going to go with this, to see if they have anything to say. Because if it's a purely negative paper, that's cool, too. Like, it can be a response paper. That's fine. But, like, you may just be like, well, who gives a shit, really? But, like, yeah, I mean, it's fine as a philosophy paper. But we have to just wait and see where it's going to go. And, yeah, that's all. Okay, so the situation creates 2 related problems for Stegenga's account. The first and more straightforward problem is that it simply does not seem plausible that there would be more progress in scenario B than in scenario A, as Stegenga's account implies. The second and less straightforward problem concerns what this implies about how, or indeed whether, progress can be measured over any extended time interval. Given the possibility of B-type scenarios where 2 step forward, 1 step back, in which justification oscillates back and forth, Stegenga's account implies we cannot tell how much progress was made between T0 and Tn by simply looking at the net change over that time. After all, every tiny increase and decrease in justification must be summed together to determine how much progress occurred. It thus turns out to be surprisingly difficult to estimate whether there was scientific progress over any given period of time on Stegenga's account, since doing so requires knowing about and measuring the extent of every single minuscule change in justification that occurred over that period. Yeah, this is, I agree, I understand with this last one. This is the question of measurement overall. How do you actually have a measuring rod that measures progress? Because, like, if you have a measuring rod yay big, or you have one like a mile big, how do you measure a coastline? The amount of distance of the coastline varies wildly, in fact infinitely so, over the size of your measuring device. And so if like things are going like basically a fractal in like the way progress is going forward, you're never going to actually be able to measure anything. Yeah. Also, knowledge is the very bottom of Bloom's taxonomy. I don't even know what Bloom's taxonomy is. I'm sorry. Okay. I mean, is that like someone that calls knowledge vague? I mean, I don't think it's vague, but like you can. Well, I guess the question is scientific progress, not knowledge. Yeah, I don't know. I do not know. Okay, 6. Conceptually impossible regress. A final problem concerns scientific regress. As we understand the term, regress is not the mere absence of progress, but the inverse thereof, such as when a given instance of progress is reversed or undone. Thus, if scientific progress is a type of improvement over time, scientific regress is a type of deterioration. While the regress of science as a whole is arguably rather rare, since the scientific enterprise is designed, at least in part, so as to ensure that progress is made and regress is avoided, regress is presumably more common in particular scientific subdisciplines. An account of progress needs the resources with which to make sense of straightforward claims about the relative prevalence of regress, and indeed such resources provided by all of the major accounts of scientific progress. For each of these accounts, it is possible for there to be decreases in the achievement in terms of which progress is defined, for example, a decrease in knowledge or understanding. You know, does this make sense? Like, I guess it has to make some sense that, like, we could have a shitty theory that misleads us, and we confuse things that we thought they were wrong, but they turned out to be right. So I guess you could be misled by some theory that would make stuff that we knew to be true, that we thought was true, to be wrong, and then we come back to it later and be like, no, we had it right the first time. That makes some sense. Okay. Yovko says, most terms probably cannot be assigned a single set of necessary and sufficient conditions, even when closing into very specific contexts. That's your intuition? Yeah, I agree with that. I agree. That's definitely true. But that's why this is a philosophical question. How we're supposed to be able to answer, like, oh, what is progress? Or like in science, at least. And this is why it's difficult, because when you start narrowing it down like that, it gets fucking messy. Absolutely. Okay. Stigenga's account, by contrast, seems to make scientific regress conceptually impossible. To see why, note first that there is not really any such thing as the inverse of change. Put differently, the inverse of some particular change would just be another change, specifically a change in the opposite direction. Thus, although it is possible for there to be an absence of progress according to Stigenga's account, that is, when there is no change in justification whatsoever, it is not possible for there to be scientific regress. After all, regress would, on Stigenga's account, be the inverse of a changing justification, but that too is a changing justification and would thus simply count as more progress on Stigenga's account. In a way, then, Stigenga's account implies a collapse of the distinction between scientific progress, understood as a type of improvement, and scientific regress, understood as a type of deterioration, in which both are equally counted as scientific progress. Yovko says, we can try to find a set of necessary and sufficient conditions which maximizes being as close to how people usually use it, as well as having certain other theoretical benefits or practical benefits. Yeah, absolutely. But then the question, of course, is how, like, on the scientific scheme where science is supposedly getting more and more close to the truth, they call it truth likeness, are we ever guaranteeing that we actually are getting closer to the truth? And that's a very difficult question to answer. Because, like, yeah, you can say, well, this is how we use it, or having certain theoretical or practical benefits, but does that actually track truth? And that's the difficulty with that sort of theory. But yeah, good point. All right, one might think that this consequence of Stigenga's view is not so bad because, as we've acknowledged, instances of scientific regress are presumably quite rare due to how the scientific enterprise is set up. However, the fact that science is designed to minimize regress simply highlights the problem. For how can Stigenga's account explain why science is set up to minimize regress if regress is conceptually impossible in the first place? Indeed, if any change in justification is progressive, then the worst thing that could ever happen is stagnation, that is, the mere absence of progress. By contrast, there is no risk whatsoever of regress. Thus, it seems, all the mechanisms of science that one would think are in place, at least partly to minimize regress, such as protections against fabrication and falsified data, would at least in this respect be completely unnecessary and perhaps even detrimental insofar as they may promote stagnation. If scientific regress cannot occur, there is absolutely no need to protect against it. That's interesting. I haven't highlighted anything in this paper yet, which is kind of, I usually highlight stuff, but I was just going to say there's one other thing that happens here. The amount of money and time and effort we put into data retention would be a waste. Like, it would actually be it'd be a terrible opportunity cost to spend any time on data retention as opposed to, doing new research with it. So it's like, it wouldn't be unnecessary and in perhaps even detrimental as they may promote stagnation. No, it'd be even worse than what this author's saying. It would be killing new research by spending money in an area that we don't need to spend money in. And so there's I think they missed, and not that anything they said here was wrong or I disagree with any of this. I just think they missed a good example here. Which is fine. They made their point without that, but it's just, piling on. Okay. From justification change to justification for true answer. So this looks like the start of this author's own account. And this is what I was saying why Yovko picked this up. Well, I was just saying the truth likeness is the important thing here. So it's this is kind of like, this is where these theories going to truth, as opposed to practical or theoretical benefits that don't appeal to the truth. Okay, for the reasons provided above, we find Stigenga's justification-based account of scientific progress unsatisfactory. Scientific progress is not mere change in scientific justification. In this final section, we supplement this negative conclusion with a positive, albeit tentative, proposal of a different type of justification-based account of scientific progress. On this account, scientific progress would roughly consist in increasing scientific justification for truths. So we're going to truth. And as I was saying earlier, I don't like truth theories, but you can see why they're doing it in this case. Just as Yovko pointed out, like there's other reasons you might be doing it, but to get towards the truth likeness that is like sort of the goal in this sort of area or understanding of science, you need to appeal to like science as approaching the truth. However, roughly for reasons provided by Dellsen, we take the most plausible elaboration of this idea to be one in which progress is always defined relative to a given question Q. And yeah, so like I was saying, it's a hard thing to, ask to like get close to the truth. So they have some proxy. I don't know what this is, but like given it's so relative progress in a model really to a given question Q. Yovko says, I was talking about how we choose a definition, not what the definition involves. In this case, I would think they're going to argue that it would be more similar to how people use a term if they include criteria related to truth. Yeah, I think that's really close. Like maybe I characterized what you were saying, but I think you were really close to what was going on here. So like, yeah, or at least I think they are close to what you were concerned about. So yeah. Okay. Thus, the more precise version of the account holds that scientific progress with respect to a given question Q consists in increasing scientific justification for the question's true answers AT. All right, what the fuck is the question's true answers? What the fuck? But okay. Again, you have to assume there's some truth out there and you're approaching the answer. As we shall emphasize below, this account does not construe progress in terms of justification for true beliefs, only for true answers, regardless of whether they are believed. In contrast to Stigenga's account, this modified account does not define progress in terms of mere changes in justification. Rather, scientific justification for true answers must increase. Lumen says, true answers feels like question begging. Yep, I completely agree. That's exactly why I don't like these theories, because no one knows what the truth is. And this is not me claiming that. They know this. And you can see them doing this little song and dance here where they're talking about questions and answers, and there has to be true answers, but like we don't know what that is, but they're doing a little song and dance here to like, make it sound better. We'll find out. Okay. What else? What's up, Sakna? How you been? Buenas noches. As a result, increasing changes in justification are not formally interchangeable. After all, contrary answers to a given question, such as A and not A, cannot both be true, so the fact that any change in justification with respect to a pair will be an increase in the justification of one or the other does not entail that such a change must involve an increase in justification for a true answer. Viper says, you say that no one knows what the truth is like. The truth is like it's a true statement. Yeah, what's the truth? What? Sorry, I can't I'm having trouble parsing that. You say that no one knows what the truth is like it's a true statement. Oh, okay. Oh yeah, what I'm saying is true? Yeah. That's fair. Like I always say, I know I have a hand and I think that's a true statement. This is getting into the wider area of no one has a full understanding of the world. No one has a full understanding of like what physics is. And so we don't have a completed theory. And so the way we increase, like the way we do science is we hope we're getting closer to the truth. But the idea that we are doing science and getting closer to the truth, you would have to understand what the truth was to know we were approaching it. And so this is an argument from logic. It's not using the same standards. And so I'm not making a scientific claim there. I'm not making an argument from a scientific background. I'm making a metaphysical claim there. And you can rightly point out that that may not be fair to the scientists because we're using different standards of justification to use like the justification terms. Like the way they're talking about the world and the way I'm talking about it maybe is orthogonal. Yeah. But yeah, again, this is not unique to me. This is not something I am like making up on the spot here. This is a known problem in this area that this truth likeness has its issues. And so it's like, I'm going to defer to like the literature here and say, look, this is just a problem in the area. Like, I'm just referencing something else. I'm telling you my understanding of the literature, not trying to make a knockdown argument here. But, like, that's fair. Liar paradox statement is false, correct. Socrates, we usually say buenos dias, you say good day or afternoon sounds too formal. Okay, cool. Lumen says returns back again to Meno's paradox. How do you know we don't know what truth is if we don't even know what truth is? Yep, exactly. Energy says, didn't Kurt Gödel prove there can't be an absolute non-circular truth with his incompleteness theorem? No, that's not true. That he proved that given certain mathematical, a certain level of mathematical sophistication, you can't prove all truths in the system. So that's what he proved, not what you just said. He proved that given a certain level of background mathematics that's assumed that you need for a lot of good mathematics, that you're going to have two statements that can't be proved. That was the incompleteness theorem. All right. Don't be saying that like non-absolute truth, or non-circular truth. It gets more complicated because he makes certain assumptions and then people attack those assumptions too. So it's not exactly as clear. But yes, given certain very well accepted mathematical positions, you can't prove everything in the system. Yes, but that's limited to those systems. Yeah. Stockton says, I am not a fan of technological progress. I am a fan of scientific progress. Fair. I'm interested when I read paper on my own and give my response because I know you're in the paper now. I'll give your response. Okay. Yeah, exactly. What Yovko said, he only applies to certain formal systems. Yep. Must have told the pop version of the theory. Yep, that's what you got there, energy. I mean, nothing against you, but it's a bit more complicated than that gloss. Yeah, and Yovko's, yeah, exactly. Yovko, it can generalize, but you got to be careful. Yeah. So there's lots of other issues going on. And yeah, and you don't want to generalize it willy-nilly to like minds and anything else. So I was like, okay. Yeah, so okay. Where was I? Okay. Yeah, so again, so they're relying on one of the answers, like either A or not A is the case, and you can get it wrong because one of them is not going to be closer to the true answer. There's been an argument in the AI safety literature about this. Let you find it? Okay, cool. Cool. Okay. Although this modified account arguably faces serious problems, some of which will be familiar from the extant literature and scientific progress. Yeah, see, again, for example, to Viper's point, the problems for epistemic and truth likeness accounts, like this is exactly, they know this. There's not going to be anything that I was saying that about approaching truth, the truth likeness that is special to me. Like I'm just quoting somebody else here. Suckman says, the reason I'm not a fan of technological progress is we take what is scientific labs and publish it and instantly into society's new technology. I think that's highly inappropriate. I think there has to be thought ahead, and we're seeing it right now with AI and robotics. Yeah, intentions. Technology are quite devious and undermines, sabotages meritocracy. Yeah. And we were discussing this earlier in the stream, I think, before you were here. We were mentioning the cotton gin and how, it made the processing of cotton a lot faster and more profitable. But the issue was you needed a lot more slaves to pick the cotton. And so it was very bad for the slaves because you needed a lot more slaves in the United States to make the cotton with the progress of the cotton gin. So, it's not progress and technology are not good for humans. What's up, Medium Mick? How you been? About time you managed to stream. Hope you're well. Yeah, I'm doing all right. Welcome in from Katie's place. Yeah, thanks for stopping by. We're finishing up this paper on progress in scientific knowledge. Yeah, if anyone here doesn't know who I am, I don't think I know most people in chat at the moment. But what I do is I read and try to explain philosophy papers on stream. Kind of a game to me. Like some people play games. I read PDFs and explain them. It's a lot of words. I know I talk an awful lot on stream, and I talk more on stream than I do in the rest of my life. Like I really talk more during streams than any other time. Okay. All right. So yeah, although this modified account, and as always, feel free to ask questions along the way. Let me know if you I'll try to explain whatever I can, but who knows. Although this modified account, can't speak anymore, arguably faces serious problems, some of which will be familiar from the extant literature on scientific progress, it does not succumb to the problems we have identified above for Stigenga's justification-based account. First, misleading evidence increases our justification for false rather than true answers, so gathering it would not contribute to progress. Second, losing or destroying evidence generally does not increase justification for true answers, unless of course the evidence is misleading, in which case it may well be right that losing or destroying it would amount to progress. Third, net increases in justification for a true answer during some episode will always align with the degree of progress attained in that episode, regardless of whether the degree of justification oscillated or always increased. Stockman says Martin Luther King Jr. stated in one of his sermons, you can tell a man to pull them up by their bootstraps, but if you tell a person who doesn't have boots to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, that's just cruel. Yeah, I mean, it used to be a joke. Like, that was the whole point. You can't pull yourself up by your bootstraps because that's literally reaching down and, like, you're going to get taller by pulling on your boots. And so the idea, this is one of these things that's just like, it was meant to be a joke and then people took it seriously because it's a little bit insane. And, you know, Martin Luther King would know that. Okay. Fourth, scientific regress can simply be understood as a decreasing justification for a true answer, which would happen, for example, if we gather misleading evidence regarding the relevant question, or if we lost some non-misleading evidence. As a corollary, this account effortlessly explains why there are mechanisms in place to prevent the gathering of misleading evidence and the destruction of non-misleading evidence in science, since both eventualities would constitute regress rather than progress. Sock now says, I know I'm just giving the other part of the equation here. I think it fits with the current dilemma we're in. Yeah, I mean, this is basically, well, I was saying this earlier too. We've let the engineers run society. We've got like these people like, well, Trump, first of all, but then we've got people like Elon Musk, who's not an engineer, but like he's running these engineering firms and the tech firms like the Jeff Bezos of the world, the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world. And I don't think these people have a very good sense of society. They have a good sense of tech, maybe. And it's just causing all these social problems now. Frank says no society runs as a meritocracy. Most people don't want meritocracy unless they have some horrifically biased definition of merit that preferences them or their family or in group. Yeah, that's true too. So people like the idea of meritocracy because they think they're going to win. Yeah, that's right. Sad, but right. I mean, it would be good if we could like take care of all of the people because we have enough food and resources to like, you know, feed and house everyone now. And then worry about, you know, maybe getting to Mars or doing some other crazy stuff once we took care of our own, you know. Hey, Josh, what's up? They care about space, though. I know. I was just thinking about that. It's like, I'd like to get to Mars, but it really would be cool. But, like, you know, at what cost sometimes? You know, like the idea of, like, the space race in this country was cool, but, like, it was a government project, like spending lots of money and like employ lots of people to do something really cool that's good. But like the idea that we've got these really powerful rich people that are basically not taking care of the population just so that they can have companies go to space is not cool. And electric cars are good. Exactly. It's like, I like all of that stuff, but like we're not doing it for the benefit of people. We're doing it for the benefit of like a few at the moment. And that's not cool. And the same thing with the AI. The AI would be super fucking cool if it wasn't like, you know, driving up electricity costs and putting people, making everyone like, not have like, you know, you can't buy a graphics card anymore. You can't buy like electricity anymore. So yeah. Yeah, they'll eventually spell bullshit. I could just poke them. Yep. You think you remembered? Cool. All right. Yeah, we're getting to the end of this anyway. Oh, there's a Penrose argument. Okay. Yeah, I don't know Lucas, but like if you mean Roger Penrose, yes. But yeah. All right. Well, if you can tell me, we'll find out. All right. It is also worth noting that this modified justification-based account is well placed to address one of the central issues that motivates the Genghis account, specifically what he calls the Ptolemaic challenge. John Lucas and Roger Penrose. Okay, thank you for the reference, Yofko. Yeah. In brief, the challenge is that Ptolemaic astronomy developed models of the solar system that according to Stigengas, were not overall of those were all false and were not over all those centuries getting any closer to the truth. And yet it seems that some progress was made on Ptolemaic astronomy. On Stigenga's view, progress was made in virtue of the fact that Ptolemaic astronomy changed our justification for various hypotheses about movements of... Oh yeah, Josh, are you home yet? Anyway, sorry. The Ptolemaic astronomy changed our justification for various hypotheses about the movement of celestial bodies. On our alternative justification-based account, by contrast, Ptolemaic astronomy made progress with respect to various questions to the extent that it increased our justification for their true answers via numerous correct predictions of the apparent movements of the celestial bodies far into the future. Okay, cool. Are the kitties cool? But yeah. This does make some sense. Like the idea that we could use the Ptolemaic model to predict celestial motion is correct. It does predict it. Granted, you need a ton of epicycles to make it correct, to fix it. But like, yeah, so what? They were doing that. And so when they made those epicycles, was that progress? Kind of yes, because it did predict the true location of the celestial, the experimental data. So that's something there. You can copy pasta? Okay. Penrose's argument that the implication of Gödel is a completist theorem for the computational theories of human intelligence was criticized by mathematicians, computer scientists, and philosophers, and the consensus among experts in these fields is that the argument fails, with different authors attacking different aspects of the argument. Oh, yeah. I think Penrose applied it to the mind, but it's a little bit shaky. The Gödel's argument applied to the theory of mind. Yeah, that's right. Thank you for grabbing it. Okay. But yeah, so this, at least in terms of justification, makes some sense. For every epicycle added to the Ptolemaic theory, which is, the Earth in the center of the universe, predicting where, like, the sun and, like, the other planets will be, it did get closer to predicting the correct location of, like, the celestial bodies. Now, is that the true location of them? Well, kind of. It gets it right. It just doesn't really show the motion correctly, but it does predict where they are in the sky. Okay. Putnam gave a good counter argument. Good to know. Okay. However, there is a requirement for accounts of progress spelled out by Stigenga forthcoming, which is not satisfied by the modified justification-based account outlined here. In particular, it doesn't satisfy the Loudon-inspired epistemic accessibility desideratum, according to which a scientific or scientific community should be able to ascertain that by doing X, they are making progress. Here, ascertain seems to be using a very strong sense to mean that the scientists should not merely be able to make rational, educated estimations of whether progress would occur. Rather, they should be as obvious as a baker determining whether the bread is rising, to use one of Stigenga's examples. Cats safe and sound and happy. Yay, happy kitties. Good. I was like, wait, yeah. Good. The kitties were happy when I saw them. I mean, your cats fight sometimes, but what are you going to do? Okay. Now, admittedly, whether or not a given episode in science increased our justification for true rather than false answers, for example, because the evidence obtained was misleading, is not quite as obvious as determining whether bread is rising. But is this really a problem for an account of scientific progress? Why I think that scientific progress should be the sort of thing about which it is nearly impossible to be wrong. In other walks of life, we generally do not think that any form of improvement must be epistemically accessible in this very strong sense. For example, the power imbalances between different genders in a given society may subtly improve in a way that can only be conclusively ascertained years or decades later after extensive sociological research into how the power dynamics shifted. In the meantime, the best we can do may be to estimate whether, to the best of our knowledge, some particular change or intervention is likely to be counteracting gendered power imbalances. So whether or not a society is making progress in this respect is arguably not epistemically accessible in Stigenga's strong sense. Similarly, while scientific progress conceived as an increase in justification for the true answer to a given question is not epistemically accessible in Stegenger's strong sense, it is surely something about which we can make all sorts of rational estimations, both in real time and after the fact, and that, we submit, is good enough. Penrose is full of shit on all topics? I don't know about that. But anyway, that's a strong statement, Dojo. But anyway, we finish this paper up. We're down to the acknowledgments, and we get to rate the paper. So, if you are new here or you're not, you're an old hat, you know you get to spam some emotes. These are better TTV emotes, so everyone's got them. You just install the extension. If you don't see them in your chat, you can see them below right here. So spam some emotes. Tell me how you felt about this paper. If this paper gave you some fun ideas, made your brain dance, then give it a brain dance. Now, scream for existential or artistic drama. This was science. It wasn't too existential. I mean, I'm probably coloring your review. You don't have to listen to me, but not so existential today. Nagoro or Ouroboros for deeper ancient ideas. Nog knife for slicing and dicing arguments. Nog navel for navel gazing, only for academics. Nog turd, all style, no substance, still poop underneath. And nog grapes for big claims that shrivel up. You can also use the global vote yay and vote nay of Twitch, and also my vote meh. Note, I calculate an overall score from your emotes. Anything in the green makes the score go up, anything in the red makes the score go down, and the vote meh actually pushes everything towards the middle. Nog Oro, yeah, so oh, sorry, you have to not capitalize. I'll fix that if you don't, DeMarshall. But spelling and capitalization do count. Frank says, I have trouble with papers of this type, by which I mean they pick a bad theory and counter it, because I don't know if the bad theory they show is a good representation or not. That's fair. Now, did they strawman the paper or not? It looks like, and this is, again, I don't know either, this was in a collection of papers on this topic. It feels like they were talking about a paper in the same journal. So you can assume that the people who were in the journal thought this was of at least good enough quality, because this was responding to a paper in the journal. So you should at least, I mean, this isn't fair, but I'd guess that they were not completely strawmanning the argument because it's in the same journal. The same editors had to approve it. So yeah, but that's fair. Dogo says, Penrose papers are exactly like that first paper you rejected. Some fucked up statement about the implications of complex topic. The dude's a bullshit of the highest order. Okay. Maybe. Bullshitter. Yeah, I mean, he did a lot of stuff back in the day. I don't know. I think his later stuff, what may have not been up to scale, but I got yelled at for talking shit about Roger Penrose anymore. I don't do that. I can only refer to him as Sir Roger Penrose. So yeah, I don't know if he's a bullshitter, but maybe his later stuff isn't up to it. Frank gave it a yay, a man, a knife. Illuminance gave it a knife, a navel gazing, and a grapes. Yeah. I mean, that's fair. I can see why it's like, it might be okay. It's a kind of like, it's mostly a response paper. And then at best at the end, I can see where the grapes come in. They just be like, okay, we're going to throw truth at it. We're going to throw truth at it and it's going to fix it. And it's like, really? You thought that was going to fix it? Like, yeah. So maybe. You can't tell how navally it is. Fair. Energy gave it a knife, navel gazing, and a yay. Yeah, I mean, I think these are fair. Depends on how popular the argument they're shredding is. Again, it's an argument in this journal, and I don't know. That's all I can say. What am I gonna say here? Into Marshall, let me know if you actually meant the Ouroboros, because otherwise I will fix it. Or if you do. Lumen says, grapes for moving the promise of substantially different account in the abstract to conclusion. That's like the best we can do and hopefully get it mostly right. Yeah, I figured that's what it was. Because it's just, they're just throwing the word truth on it. And it's like, really? You thought that was going to do it? It's like they said they were going to try to fix it, and calling something, oh yeah, it's like just getting closer to truth. That's not doing much. Andrew says, at least Penrose engaged with philosophy when Lawrence Krauss claims quantum states are nothingness. Yeah, I mean, like I said, my history goes through Roger Penrose. So I went to BU. My philosophy of science teacher was Tien Chow. Tien Chow was at Oxford or Cambridge under Roger Penrose in some sense. And so he had very high regards for Roger Penrose. I mean, you are, of course, there are opinions vary, and that's fine. But like, he held him in very high regard, and I have no reason to think Tian Chow was mistaken about that. Viper says the original paper was called Justifying Scientific Progress. I thought maybe it would be cool to do both, but it was much longer. Yeah. I mean, I thought this is a fine paper, really. Like, I don't have a problem with this. It is kind of a response paper, but like, you can see where the other paper went wrong. It took progress to be any sort of change, and it didn't ground the change in a way that maintained like nonsense or bad change was bad. So it's a bit of an issue. Energy says, I generally give credit to scientists who take philosophy seriously. Yeah, that's always important. Lumen says, I don't really think they gave a different count. Their criticism of Stigenga seemed good enough, though, assuming it's accurate representation. Yeah, and that's how I'm reading this, too. It seems like their argument was good. So this is going to get me some Nog Knives. That's really what this comes out to me. A little Nog Navally. Like, this is kind of how I feel about it. Knives and navels. And, you know, like, Luminance is kind of also giving me the, we're going to have to go with grapes on this. I'm getting a very sort of, like, I want that, like, so this is two good and two bads. And that's going to give it about a 50-50 paper. I like this as a pure response paper. I'd rate it higher than them with this bullshit at the end, where they're like, oh yeah, we're just going to do the truth likeness. So it's like, I kind of feel like, you know what? I'm going to give it, like, I feel a little bit bad about that. So it's like, I'm going to throw a vote yay on this too, just to push it over the limit maybe. But it's like, I don't even want to. Like, it's like, you know. Because, like, that fucking shitty ass argument at the end makes me annoyed. But anyway, I'll think about it. Maybe I'll change it in a sec.